process of selecting for scrutiny is not a human process now. There is a computerized mechanism. It's not even draw of luck or chance, where several informations are fed. Supposing there is large cash withdrawal, there is large cash deposit, then the red signal will go up and that case will be selected for scrutiny, which has to be selected for scrutiny. The total number of cases selected for scrutiny are only about 3 lakhs, that is less than 1%. तो ये जो कल्पना है कि हर असेसी का हैरेसमेंट होता है, 99% of the cases the assessments go through as they are filed. और इसमें जो ये जो नई गाइडलाइंस ले डाउन की हैं और उसमें भी अपील के प्रावधान किन में हो किन में ना हो उसको कम किया जा रहा है, और उसमें भी जब फैसला असेसमेंट का होता है तो 2/3 लोग उसको स्वीकार कर लेते हैं. Only 1/3 of them challenge it in appeal. तो इसलिए उसको भी और सिंप्लीफाई किया जाए कि किन केसेस में अपील हो किन में ना हो. ये सब हम लोग कंसिडर उसको करते हैं ताकि सिंप्लीफिकेशन हो. अर्जुन साहब ने यू रेज दिस इश्यू ऑफ exemption limit on cooperative banks, particularly for income tax, deduction of tax on interest, and you said it should be raised from 10,000 to 25,000. Now, under the existing provisions of the Income Tax Act, there is a provision for submission of self-declaration itself. It is number 15G and 15H. It requests for a non-deduction of tax of income which is not chargeable to tax. The moment you file that form, you are exempted from that remedy. That's there. If it is to be further strengthened, I will certainly have it looked into. आपका मैंने सुझाव नोट कर लिया है, उसके ऊपर चिंतन निश्चित रूप से हम लोग करेंगे. Madam, in addition to this, there are several important significant changes in the budget and in the finance bill. GST, corporation tax, wealth tax, increased remedy to middle class persons. Now these have all been steps which we have initiated, and there are very significant steps with regard to squeezing of black money. I am receiving various applications and requests from various sections of industry. The popular opinion is that this should be squeezed, because if parallel economy is brought into the official economy, then obviously the size of your economy increases, your GDP increases, your revenues will increase, and increased revenues will enable me to bring down taxation percentages or taxation slabs itself. But we are not interested in harassment of any section of assessees in this process. As a result of which, I am applying my mind, because some steps we have announced in the finance bill. So for some rules and notifications have to be issued, they'll be taken into consideration. And the black money bill will come up with regard to foreign assets and foreign incomes. Madam, in the morning when you there was a miscommunication gap maybe from our side, and it also mentioned a negative voting with regard to clause 184. That is not so. Clause 184 has to have a positive vote. I may just correct that. Okay. I had already made a statement in the morning that why for the present I am just deferring for some time the PDMA. There are several indirect concessions also we have given. And it may be of some interest to my friends in the Congress party that amongst the various indirect concessions that I have given is to manufacturers of footwear in India. जो लोग जूते बनाते हैं, चप्पल बनाते हैं. And today we are becoming a great manufacturing hub at manufacturing low-cost footwear. And therefore, hopefully with the concessions, the whole of this country can get put in, rather than only some people. So people wearing footwear is not a bad thing to happen. if India becomes an important footwear hub itself. दोनों तरह के होंगे. Booted होना better है, booted out होना बड़ा खतरनाक है. Madam, after this there are some representations which I received, both from members of parliament, industry and various sections, both with regard to the direct tax proposals and the indirect tax proposals. And there are some clarifications or changes which are reflected in the amendments which I have given. It's customary that the governments are responsive and listen to all sections of society. And therefore, just for clarity purposes, I'll read those paragraphs. First, with regard to the direct tax proposals, where I'm making some changes. The first, madam, is with regard to the place of effective management. In Finance Bill 2015, it was proposed that a company shall be said to be a resident in India if it is an Indian company or its place of effective management at any time in that year is in India. Concerns have been raised with regard to the phrase "at any time," which may lead to unintended consequences, such as even one board meeting in India may make a foreign company a resident in India. The explanatory memorandum to the Finance Bill 2015 states in the guidance note will be issued in this regard. However, taking into account the concerns raised, I propose to drop the phrase "at any time" so that no ambiguity remains. Thus, a foreign company will be treated as a company resident in India for a previous year if its place of effective management is in India in that previous year. Fund manager regime. Finance Bill 2015 provides for a special tax regime for offshore funds. The special tax regime has provided for broad-based funds. Accordingly, Clause 6 of the bill provides for certain conditions regarding minimum number of investors, threshold of participation interest of a single member of the group or connected persons. These conditions cannot be fulfilled by the government funds, sovereign wealth funds and pension funds, which are regulated under the laws of their countries. Accordingly, I propose to provide that these conditions regarding minimum number of investors, threshold of participation of interest of members, etc., will not apply in the case of investment funds set up by the government, by the foreign governments, or its central bank, or sovereign wealth funds, such as other funds as may be notified by the central government, subject to fulfillment of conditions. Then, madam, there is a change I am making with regard to alignment of provisions of the Income Tax Act with the ICDS Acts. There is an important announcement I had made in the budget speech with regard to tax incentives for the state of Bihar and West Bengal, because the Prime Minister's commitment is that some of the states must be helped in order to grow, and whatever package that we have announced for the state of Andhra Pradesh will be applicable to the state of Bihar and West Bengal, and therefore those are being incorporated in the finance bill itself. There is an important issue of cooperative sugar mills. Just as the issue of cooperative banks that you had raised, sugar mills operating in the cooperative sector in certain states of India, particularly Maharashtra, Gujarat, pay to the sugarcane growers a final amount, often referred to as the final cane price, which is over and above the price fixed by the central government under the Sugar Control Order 1996. The payment of FCP over and above the said price and the timing and the manner of its determination have resulted in a tax dispute regarding allowability of excess payment. I propose to provide that the amount paid as price of sugar cane by cooperative societies engaged in the manufacture of sugar at a price which is fixed or approved by the government shall be allowed as a deduction in computing the business income of the sugar cooperatives. The proposed amendment will resolve this dispute, tax dispute, prospectively. Deferment of MAT with regard to REITs and InvITs. Finance Bill 2014 provided for tax neutrality in respect of exchange of share of a special purpose vehicle with the units of business trusts. However, no neutrality deferment of MAT liability was provided. The liability under the MAT may arise due to recording of exchange of shares with the units at a fair value in compliance with the provisions of notified accounting standards by a shareholder being a company. This may result into cash flow problems for the company. In order to address the issue, I propose to provide for exemption from levy of MAT on gains and losses arising out of exchange of shares with the units of business trusts, REITs or InvITs. The liability under minimum alternative tax will arise only on actual transfer of such units. MAT on foreign companies. The Finance Bill 2015 proposes to provide that in case of FIIs, profits corresponding to their income for capital gains on transaction in securities which are liable to tax at a lower rate shall not be subject to MAT. There is, however, an old dispute which is pending in the Supreme Court. Considering the various representations received subsequently and the fact that certain incomes are taxed on gross basis in case of foreign companies, I propose to provide that amount of income accruing or arising to a foreign company from 1. Capital gains arising on transaction in securities, 2. Interest, royalty or fees for technical services chargeable to tax at a lower rate than 18% shall not be liable to MAT. Madam, in addition to this, as far as the indirect tax proposals are concerned, there are some representations I have received from a number of members of Parliament. The first I have received from industry and members from Goa, particularly with regard to the iron ore fines or the powder which is mined there. Domestic iron ore miners, especially miners of the low-grade iron, are reeling under a pressure due to substantial fall in international prices of iron ore, affecting the livelihood of several sections of society associated directly or indirectly with iron ore mining. As a measure of relief, I propose to reduce the export duty on iron ore fines below 58% Fe content from 30% to 10%. However, export duty of the other iron ores required by domestic steel industry is being retained at 30%. As a measure to provide a level playing field to domestic manufacturers in private sector vis-a-vis defence, public sector undertakings and ordnance factories and imports, I propose to withdraw the excise duty exemption available to the defence PSUs and ordnance factory boards. I propose to withdraw the exemptions of additional duty of customs, CVD and SAD in certain cases. These imports will, however, continue to remain exempt from basic custom duty. The changes will be with effect from 1st June 2015. Further, direct imports of such goods by the Government of India and the state government shall continue to remain exempt from basic custom duty and CVD and SAD. Then for honourable members from Kerala, who have all met me, natural rubber is a plantation crop. Over 12 lakh farmers are dependent on this crop for their livelihood. In recent months, the prices of rubber both in the international and domestic market have fallen considerably. To protect interest of rubber growers, I propose to increase the basic custom duty on natural rubber from 20% or rupees 30 per kilogram, whichever is lower, to 25% or rupees 30 per kilogram, whichever is lower. While the increase in the ad valorem component of the duty will protect the interest of domestic rubber plantation farmers when the prices are low, no increase in specific component will protect the interest of domestic users of natural rubber as and when the international prices rise. In order to promote Make in India by boosting domestic weavers and exporters of silk, while simultaneously ensuring reasonable protection for domestic agricultural industry, I propose to reduce the basic custom duty on raw silk from 15% to 10%. This will address the problems of duty inversion in the sector of silk yarn fabric and attract a basic custom duty of 10%. In service tax, madam, I propose to make some changes in certain penal provisions in the service tax so as to broadly align them with the corresponding provisions of the central excise law. In Budget 2015, several social security schemes were announced. I propose to exempt the levy of service tax on services of life insurance business provided under Pradhan Mantri Jeevan Jyoti Bima Yojana, services of life insurance business provided by the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, services of general insurance business provided under the Pradhan Mantri Suraksha Bima Yojana, and services provided by contribution collecting agencies in the Atal Pension Yojana. In addition to the above, I propose to make certain amendments arising out of the budget proposals. Notification giving rise to these proposals are being issued and shall be laid before Parliament in the due course. With these few announcements, madam, I commend the Finance Bill to this Honourable House for approval.
ऐसा गलत प्रचार करके ही ये लोग पावर में आए। देखिए, सुनिए, नरेगा, the only insurance for India.